Hey guys, welcome to the Doghouse Podcast. College football fans, it is not getting bigger than this. Number 2, Georgia goes on the road at Alabama, Tuscaloosa. It's going to be game day. It's going to be prime time. Should be a great venue, great event. We got Alex Taylor from the Bama Factor. We discuss is Kalen DeBoer ready for prime time in his first SEC game as a coach? Also, how good is Ryan Williams? And we make some interesting predictions and previews for the big-time matchup. Also, we just surpassed 500 subscribers. Appreciate all the support. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, share the podcast. That really helps out. Got a great guest, first-time guest for us. We really appreciate Alex Taylor from the Bama Factor. How are we doing today, Alex?
I'm good, Trey. I appreciate you for having me, and obviously, looking forward to the episode, and obviously, really looking forward to, of course, the game on Saturday as well. A game everybody on each side has really circled and really been looking forward to. I know, and me personally, I'm going to be there, so I'm super stoked about it. It should be a good game.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Can't get any bigger with this. Georgia, number 2, Georgia on the road going to Tuscaloosa, number 4. It's going to be game day. It's going to be 7:30 night game. It's going to be Trump's in town. Can't get any bigger than this. So first off, I wanted to say the way it's been the narrative, the storyline. We know Kirby Smart 1-5 all time against Alabama. We know Nick Saban's not there anymore. So what I wanted to ask you, being from on the Bama side, was this a Nick Saban problem or is this an Alabama problem with Kirby struggling against them all time?
What's really funny about that is I got asked the same question earlier today by actually one of my followers, and they kind of gave their topic on it, and it was interesting because when I really think about it, yeah, Nick Saban was there and yeah, coached Alabama. But so to answer that question, I for one think it's a little bit of both, because if you go back even really before Kirby was there, when Kirby was still at Alabama, Alabama plays Georgia Saban's first year, they lose in overtime. But then, 2008 comes and they win the blackout game. 2012 SEC championship game comes down to the wire. Alabama wins, at the end. Then 2015, Kirby is still there. They go to Athens and they win. And then Kirby is hired and then starts, obviously the times that he gets to play Bama. I think from a standpoint, like I said, it may be a little bit of both. Yes, Saban not being there does play, a huge role in this game. But I think a little bit just because, it's almost been like, especially like in 2021 when they came into the SEC title game, the whole question was, can they exercise the demon against Alabama? And then they lost the SEC title game, but then they finally broke that in the national title game. And then in 23, kind of the same thing. But so I think it's a little bit of both. And obviously, now Kalen DeBoer and Kirby Smart have to start their own game and, their own trend as well. So for me, I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah, it's Nick Saban. Yeah, he coached him. And again, I always like to say he taught Kirby everything he knows, but he didn't teach Kirby everything that he himself knows. So, yeah. So I like to think it's a little bit of both, honestly. And I've got some of my followers who are saying, oh, it's all Saban. Then I've got some who are saying, no, it doesn't matter. It's the A. So I think it's a little bit of both, honestly.
Yeah. I'm going to go with it is Saban, because 1-5 against him because pretty much Kirby's won against everybody else. I mean, all the who's who. Was it 42-2 against anyone but Alabama? So I just think just the matchup, it's always been kind of like the mentor and the student. Obviously, the mentor has had the hand on it. So I'm going to say it's a Nick Saban. That's why I think deep down everybody was a little excited when they knew that Nick Saban retired, just because how it's been the kryptonite and a lot of heartbreak on our side. But we give it to Nick Saban, the GOAT, seven times, or a seven-time national title, and he's been great on game day. So, much respect there. So looking at the matchup, it is I think it's 2.5, 2-point spread currently. I'll say a lot of hand wringing on our side. I know I've been a little stressed about it. I've been kind of like putting my ear and listening to everybody. A lot of people, of course, are on Alabama because it's there, but like 65% is here, and then Georgia is favored by 2, and I can see this thing moving down even lower. But to me, from the polls from us, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts already and giving predictions. I mean, there's everybody's kind of on Alabama, but I see why, because Georgia looked like crap against Kentucky, barely got out of there 13-12, and Alabama has been rolling. Jalen Milroy is a game changer with his legs. I mean, he's explosive, 4.4, almost like a running back, very impressive. And you guys have rolled, so just wanted to kind of we can get into the X's and O's here and a deep breakdown here in a little bit. Just want to get your initial thoughts on the matchup.
So obviously this is a big game that I've obviously been, thinking about since the offseason. And I had a lot of people, ask me through the offseason, all of my DMs through the offseason content was, what's your take on the Georgia game? What do you think we're going to do against Georgia? How do you think Georgia's going to be this year? How do you think this is going to be? And I always told them, I'm like, I'm not really going to know that until I see Georgia play and until, I see us play. And then really the week of is when you're going to hear my full spiel on Alabama, Georgia. But looking at it from just a matchup standpoint, each of these teams come in 3-0. And, the talent on both sides, I saw a graphic today. It was CBS Sports, and it said the talent on Alabama and Georgia. Alabama has like 17 5-stars on the roster. Georgia's got like 16. Alabama has like 52 4-stars, and Georgia's got like 54, I think. And then Georgia's got 16 3-stars. Alabama has 15 3-stars. So the talent of each team is very equal. So, and the playmakers at the key positions. Quarterback, you got 2 good quarterbacks going at it. I mean, Carson Beck, obviously, very good, accurate passer a year ago. A lot of Georgia fans. I have a lot of friends who are Georgia fans who were extremely happy that he came back, and that actually kind of really bolstered their title hopes for this season, having an experienced QB back. You land a huge guy out of the portal in Trevor Etienne as well. A guy who did very well at Florida. Kind of made some Florida fans upset. So, but other than that, then, in the wide receiver and the tight end room, you lose a generational talent in Brock Bowers. You lose a really good receiver in Landon McConkey. But, you turn around and you get London Humphreys from Vanderbilt, who's been really good early on, who's got some really underrated speed, in my opinion. And then, you've still got Oscar Delp, who is a good and solid tight end. And then, of course, you got Dominic Lovett. You've got Anthony Evans. You've got Dylan Bell. And then, a lot of those guys in your backfield, obviously the true freshman Nathan Frazier has been very consistent as well. And then, on Alabama side, we were happy to return Jalen Milroe because we felt in this offensive system, under Kalen DeBoer and, Jamarcus Shepard and a few of these other guys, he was going to thrive. And we saw what Michael Penix did. A 3-star talent, the number 48 quarterback in his recruiting class, and turned into a Heisman finalist and top 10 draft pick. So, and then, our tailback room, with Jam and Justice, and then, really switching to the receiver room, which I think a lot of people tend to underrate our receiver room this year because of the speed that we have. You have Kendrick Law and you have Jeremy Bernard who transferred, but a lot of people that, obviously are talking about right now is our 17-year-old sensation, Ryan Williams, obviously, and very happy we have him. So just from a matchup standpoint, and then, each of the offensive lines are good. Georgia and Alabama kind of really ever since Kirby and Saban have been at their respective schools, their offensive lines are always good. And, the defensive fronts are always good. I do personally feel, and Alabama fans probably won't love me saying this, I do feel Georgia has an edge over us in the secondary simply because of experience, because we have talented guys like obviously Malachi Moore. He's a 5th year. Domani Jackson, really elite player, junior. Devontae Smith, redshirt junior. But outside of those two, we have a lot of freshmen and sophomores. So they're good and they're talented, but they're young. Then on Georgia's side, you've got guys like Everett, seasoned guy. Then you've got one of the best safeties in the country, Malachi Starks. So, and Georgia's got 2 elite linebackers, Samuel Monta Jr. and CJ Baxter. And then I don't know, is Mikael Williams, is he scheduled to play on Saturday, or is he up in the air, or is he?
Yeah, up in there, but I would definitely see he travels. And I think you might get him some different packages. I don't think he gets a lot of snaps, maybe some third down where they can go after the passer. I think you see him a little bit. I hope so anyway. Warren Brinson, I think get him back, and Jordan Baby Hall hadn't played. He's coming off a broken leg. He's done some things. That was another thing against Kentucky. They were just really low in depth and had to bring in a lot of really young guys. But I believe we're going to get some guys back. Hopefully, at least can rotate it in and give them some snaps. Answer your question.
Yeah. I think that was the big thing for each of these teams. Having an off week prior to playing each other, because we had Malachi Moore went into concussion protocol from our previous game. He's good. Quay Russaw, a big part of our defense. I thought from when he got hit in the Wisconsin game, I thought he had torn his ACL. I thought was done. But obviously DeBoer comes out, says he's optimistic about him. He's in practicing this week, and obviously everybody else is is obviously healthy. Obviously each QB is healthy, and so each team should really be at full strength. Now I heard something earlier, and you may be able to confirm this: is Tate Ratledge out on the offensive line for y'all, or is he playing?
Oh yeah, he's out. He's out several weeks. They're talking about getting him later in October. He had tightrope surgery and MCL sprain, so yeah, he's out for a while. And we're gonna the replacement's going to be Micah Moore. So he played a little bit against Kentucky.
And I hate to see that because Tate is a guy who's going to go top 10 in the draft this year, probably along with Tyler Booker. I think Tyler Booker and Tate Ratledge are probably, in my opinion, the two best guards in the draft this year. So and I mean, and I've seen some mock drafts of where they've got those two ending up on the same team, and if that happens, then you've got yourself a good line. I think so. You got one at left and one at right. I think that'd be pretty elite. But I think for the most part, this matchup should be pretty much healthy guys, and that's what you want in a game like this. You don't want injuries to key players, in a game like this, because you want to see the best on the best here. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, 2021, we were on the Alabama side, we were deprived of seeing J-Mo and Mechie against y'all, and then last year y'all were kind of deprived of seeing Brock and Blatt. Even though they played, they weren't at full strength. So I mean, hopefully this year all the really good key players are healthy, they're there, so we're really going to get to see something this year.
Yeah, I think we're going to get both teams best, so it should be a good one. Wanted to give a shout out to one of the partnerships I've been a part of recently, Driving to the Top Productions. Check out their YouTube channel. They have everything from Pittsburgh baseball to Pittsburgh Steelers. Also talk some wrestling. Also talk college football. I'm part of that. So check out Driving to the Top Productions. They're supporting me this year with StreamYard account, so I really appreciate them. Check out them. They're growing. So one other question, because you mentioned him and he's an elite player. So how good is the Ryan Williams kid? I want to call him kid because he's 17 years old. And who does he remind you of? I've heard several names because Alabama's always had elite wide receivers. So who would you say remind you of?
So just watching him the first 3 games and just how he moves and how he the way he runs his routes, the way he catches the ball, the way he runs after the catch, and just the mannerisms and the ability. He reminds me a lot of Devontae Smith, honestly. And not only with the frame, because, they're very similar in frame, they're very similar in height. But like I said, the route running and just the shiftiness after the catch. And the funny thing about Devontae Smith, back in 2017, when we were going into the 17 season, when we had all the true freshmen, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and Devontae come in, along with Tua, several other guys, I said at A-Day that year, I said, Jeudy and Ruggs are special and, they're good. But I remember saying at A-Day, I said, that Devontae Smith kid, I don't know when, I don't know how, but that kid is going to make a huge play sometime this season. And it just happened to be in the biggest game of the year. And from then on, I don't necessarily on the field, it didn't look like he could beat Ruggs or Jeudy or Jalen Waddle in a race. But he turned out to be pretty fast, really down the sideline. And I always used to say he didn't run; he just would glide across the field, and that's kind of how Ryan does. And people who played against Devontae, and even people who have played against Ryan already, that I've heard from guys who played against him in high school, said his speed is very underrated. He's super fast, but it's like he just glides past you. He doesn't even have to run that hard. So Ryan has for sure lived up to the hype. as Alabama fans in the offseason, I will say from the Auburn side, we had to hear a lot of Cam Coleman's better. Cam Coleman's more elite. Perry Thompson is better. Jeremiah Smith is better, which Jeremiah Smith and him are obviously doing extremely well. But, Ryan in, the first 3 weeks, has a touchdown every game. And, Cam Coleman, not so much. But Ryan is a guy who I think, and this may be a little controversial to some people, I think Saturday night, I think he might be used as a decoy because he's 17, but he can take the top off. 2 of his 4 touchdowns this year have been over the top. And, you got to account for that. And, you still got to respect the kid's downfield ability and, could be a decoy to get some other guys open because, you got to respect the downfield threat. But I do expect him to have catches, but I could see, a DeBoer and Sheridan system of where he's used as a decoy a lot of times to draw other players off of other players and get guys open in the flat. Because we saw that in the past, 2020 when Smith won the Heisman, he there was one game where just about every game he played exceptionally well and he had a very good stat line. But there was one game that year, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Tennessee. Tennessee, he didn't really do terribly much. In fact, even Mac Jones didn't even have a touchdown pass a game. We just ran the ball all day long. But Slade Bolden had like 11 catches in that game. Our tight ends had a couple. Devontae only had like 4 or 5, but they were over for 100 yards. But like he just wasn't extremely productive, but because he just kept going down the field and he just kept opening up the guys underneath. So because they just kept taking him downfield. So I could see something like that. But as far as the hype goes, I think the kid's a generational talent. I saw him play in high school, and the fact that he won Mr. Football his 10th grade and junior year, and the fact that he should be a senior in high school right now, and he's literally one of the top 2 wide receivers in all of college football right now, I think that says a lot about the kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard great things about him. I've seen the highlights. I think four touchdowns, like 250 yards so far, so very impressive. Georgia secondary is going to have their cut out for him in that game. So, hopefully we can contain him, maybe not stop him. But we'll see, and hopefully we can hold them to some less explosive plays. But that's a great comparison. Devontae Smith. Also, I got Devontae Smith on my fantasy team. So
okay, all right, nice.
There you go. And real quick, because I know Jalen Milroy got a great running game, Justice Haynes, and those guys got Ryan Williams. Wanted to maybe ask in this game with the matchup, what's maybe a weakness, or maybe not a weakness, but maybe a question for the Bama team going into this game?
I'd say question for the Bama team for sure, like I alluded to earlier, is probably the secondary, simply because we are young in that side. And, in the offseason, ravaged by transfer portal exits, we lose Caleb Downs, to the portal, Ohio State. Trey Amos goes to Ole Miss. Jake Pope goes to Georgia. And then, Antonio Kite goes to Auburn, Earl Little Jr. to Florida State. We lost Kool-Aid and Terrion to the draft. So, you really had to rebuild a whole secondary. But I think Saban did a really good job in his last recruiting class. You land Jalen Mbakwe, Xavier Brown, and Xavier Mincy, who were all 3 consensus All-American 5 stars and the number 1, 2, and 3 corners in the class. You bring in a guy like Domani Jackson, who was the number 1 rated corner in 2 recruiting cycles ago, one of the top rated corner transfers. Then you bring in Keon Sabb. Keon Sabb, I think, is going to be an X factor Saturday night because, you bring him from Michigan, obviously played, championship level ball a year ago. And then obviously, we have Malachi Moore, very senior laden guy, has played Georgia now. This will be the 4th time in his career. I'm sorry, the 5th time in his career. And so, he's very familiar with Georgia, obviously. Then we have guys like Devontae Smith and everything. But, we do have some youth on that side. Xavier Brown and Mbakwe and Red Morgan and Xavier Mincy are true freshmen, and they are ultra talented guys who I think are going to blossom into All-Americans. And I think they're good. Don't get me wrong. But where an experienced quarterback like Carson Beck, where experienced receivers, can exploit that, and where, a play caller like Mike Bobo can look at that, in the first 3 games, we unfortunately a few times, those 2 I just said, Xavier Brown and Red Morgan, have gotten kind of burned on the deep ball. Thankfully, those quarterbacks are not accurate. The quarterback we're fixing to play in Carson Beck is accurate, and he's going to hit that. And their receivers are going to 8 times and probably 9 times out of 10 catch that ball. So I think that's kind of not necessarily just a glaring weakness. I think the secondary's been pretty good so far this year. We've obviously got like 4 or 5 interceptions on the year, so I'm very pleased with that. I think overall we've got to keep things in front of us, and that may be the glaring weakness for us that if we're not careful, it could be exploited. We just got to keep everything in front of us, and we got to play. And obviously, we really can't get called holding or any pass interferences. Those are just kill drives and extend drives, obviously. So I think that's one thing.
Yeah, really appreciate that. I have read in that maybe a little. We'll say not a weakness question in the secondary, but for Georgia, we got to get a better separation. Didn't get any separation in the Kentucky game. Dominic Lovett's probably going to be your number one go-to. We got to get Colby Young going, Dylan Bell, some of the tight ends, Oscar Delp, maybe even Lawson Lucky, who's very explosive. But I got to get them going. If not, it's going to be a long night. And we got to get the running game going with Trevor Etienne and also Nate Frazier, who's very explosive. But yeah, appreciate that breakdown. And I'm sure Georgia fans and I know myself will probably be needing some of these on Saturday night. Great sponsor of the show, VivaTequilaSeltzer.com. 0 carbs, 0 sugar. Great for the golf course. Great for tailgate. Get 20% off is Doghouse 20. Doghouse 20 for 20% off. Personal favorites, watermelon. So might be pounding or hitting some of these and getting ready for the game because I know it's going to be stressful. So check them out on VivaTequilaSeltzer.com and also on Instagram. And another question I have for you, Alex. So we know no more Nick Saban. So is Kalen DeBoer ready for prime time? First SEC game, big time matchup. Kirby Smart coming to town. So we're going to get your thoughts on. And what do you think about the Kalen DeBoer era so far?
So yeah, I'll start off with what I think of the year so far. So really going back to when he was hired, the day that Nick Saban, he decided to, obviously hang it up and he said that, he was, through with coaching, it took the world by surprise. I was half surprised, half expecting it because, I kind of saw, I thought he had maybe 2 to 3 years left, maybe win one more title and then, go out like that. Kind of just all of a sudden, just a few days after the title game. And then, you just see, oh, wow, he's really retiring. But, well-deserved, he's been great to see in the media. You see this whole other side of him, just how analytical his mind really is. And I think now other college football fans are getting to see just how smart he is and with what, he brings to the table on that side. But when we were searching for a coach, somebody asked me who I wanted. And ironically, I said Kalen DeBoer because I saw what he did at Indiana. I saw what he did at Washington, his other, career stops. And, I had a lot of people say, oh, well, he won, championships at Sioux Falls. That's a junior college. And I said, it doesn't matter what level of college ball you win a championship at. If you win even one or especially multiple championships at any level in college, that means you were the best coach at that level. So you gradually work your way higher. And, I always tell people all the time, people who watch the Netflix series, Last Chance U, are you going to say that Buddy Stevens at EMCC isn't a good coach because he's only won, 7 junior college championships? I said, no, that's an elite head coach. It doesn't matter where it's at. So, and then, Lance Leopold, who's the head coach at Kansas, has also, he won like 4 or 5 in the junior college ranks. He only lost like 6 games in the junior college ranks and won over like 150. So, but when we hired him, people asked me, you didn't want Sarkisian or Lane Kiffin? And I said, first of all, I did not want Lane Kiffin. He was our OC. He was good, but I didn't want Kiffin. And people were like, you didn't want Sarkisian? I'm like, no, I didn't really want Sarkisian. And then so when DeBoer came in, and I think just what he did at Washington, and if you look at the primetime games he played in last year, I don't think people really appreciate that he beat Oregon twice last year. I mean, Oregon was a good football team last year. You had Bo Nix, you had Tez Johnson, you have Trayshawn Holden, had a pretty good defense. You had a very explosive offense, but you literally beat Oregon not once but twice. And as Alabama knows, it's very hard to beat a team twice in a year. I mean, it's insanely hard. And Kalen DeBoer did just that. And the second time around, it got close at the end, but, really through the whole game, it was not close in the Pac-12. And, then he goes and he beats Texas twice. So he's beat Sarkisian twice, and he's beat Lincoln Riley twice. So big primetime games, big top 25 games. He's like 12-1, I think, or like 12-0 or something like that in top 25 games. So this is it's a good measuring stick for him. And, obviously, you bring Kirby Smart, who's won, 2 out of the last 3, a guy who was under the tutelage of Saban all those years. And, it's a very good test. I will preface by saying that, whoever wins or loses this game is not really going to affect their season that much. It's so early in the year. And Georgia has 1 loss, they're going to be in the playoff. Alabama has 1 loss or 2, they're going to be in the playoff. Same thing with Georgia. 1, 2 losses, they're in the playoff. So I'll say by whoever wins or loses this game, each of our respective teams are going to be in the playoff. So in my opinion, like I've got 7 teams in the playoff right now. So
yeah, completely agree. It's not a make or break. I just know with Georgia's brutal schedule, this is one of the 4 of the gauntlet, in my opinion. But it'd be good to have this one. But I think you can get 10-2 to get in, but 9-3 will be really tough. But it's going to be a tough matchup. And wanted to get your prediction on the game. Not to put you on the spot there, but get maybe a little bit of a breakdown and get your prediction on the game.
Yeah. So I've gone really kind of back and forth on my prediction here. And so my biggest keys to the game in my prediction are time of possession and ball control, which team can really control the clock. Kind of last year we saw Alabama kind of take that to Georgia, in the first half, Georgia had the time of possession. Alabama really kind of played keep away in the second half, really did pretty well with that. Same thing, in 21 SEC championship game, you went and time of possession was big there. And so it's going to be time of possession and who can hold on to the ball the longest, have long sustained drives, which teams commit the fewest penalties, and and then it's going to be who can also win the trenches. That's my top key. Who can win the trenches? And obviously, Alabama South Florida game offensive line until the fourth quarter was. We kind of saw Georgia's offensive line struggle a little bit last year. Struggle a little bit last week against Kentucky. So, and with Tate Ratledge out, I'll be really interested to see how our defensive line takes that. But overall, this is either going to be a slug it out game, and sorry, that's my son, but
no problem at all.
Yeah. So I think it's either going to be a slug it out game, all out war to the end. I could see, 17-14, just like a defensive war of old days, of 2 really good defenses, a 17-14, or, I could see, somebody kind of pulling away, like a 35-21, 35-17 type game. So if like I said, it's going to be who commits the least amount of mistakes, like turnovers. And thankfully, Alabama hasn't committed a lot this year. Neither is Georgia. And I think one interesting statistic I saw, Georgia's the last Power 4 team to not give up a touchdown so far this year. So that's going to be interesting. Can they keep the streak going? Last week it was Tennessee and Georgia, and, Tennessee gave up one late and everything. So that's going to be interesting. But for the respective teams, we thought Clemson was going to be a little better than they were. Georgia comes out in the second half, annihilates them. And then, then you have, Tennessee Tech and Kentucky, and then, didn't have the best game at Kentucky. Alabama didn't have the cleanest game against South Florida, but, still pulled it out. And, everybody's like, well, Georgia struggled with Kentucky. And then, a Georgia fan will go back, Alabama struggled with South Florida. And so it was like this. But these teams seeing each other this weekend, it's going to be the best team they've seen. So each team is getting a challenge, and I think each team knows that. I think each team respects that, and it's always a good. And I like how Alabama had the Alabama-Clemson rivalry for a while, and then we always have Tennessee and Auburn and LSU, but now since we been known to play Georgia the last couple of years. I mean, it's almost like, we're forming our own rivalry again. So I think it's healthy to see. And like I said, regardless of who wins or loses this game, it's each of these teams are in the playoff, and it doesn't change the fact that these, in my opinion, are the two most talented and the two most well-rounded teams in football today. And whoever wins or loses, I think you're going to see Alabama and Georgia play not once, maybe not even twice, but possibly 3 times. So this might be a preview of your SEC title game. This might be a preview of your semifinal game. Or it could be a preview of Georgia lands at like a 7 seed and Bama lands at like a 10 seed or, like a 11 seed or something like that. It could be an NC game. So it'll be interesting. So it's going to go one of 2 ways. It's either going to be close or it's going to create a little bit of separation.
Yeah, completely agree. Appreciate the breakdown there. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Go ahead and make my picks. I'm going to throw some stats out. So Kirby Smart, of course, 1-5. So I think he's going to mentally come in. He wants this game. Georgia is coming off struggling and looking like crap, doo-doo, whatever. I mean, a lot of Georgia fans were not happy with that game. So you had 2 weeks to get. He got on them boys with the microphone the way he is, yelling at them. So you're going to have a motivated, focused team. Also, Kirby is 16-2, coming off more than a week to prepare. Last loss, I believe, was against Texas in 2018 bowl game. Alabama is actually 69th against the rush, which I was surprised to see. Georgia's actually 42, which is less than standard, so they're struggling. Georgia, as you mentioned, number 1 against the pass and hasn't given up a touchdown. Keys to the game in this is if whichever team can rush them more. I think in all these meetings, if they have more rushing yards, whoever wins the rushing battle. Turnover margin. Penalties, I was looking at. Georgia's ranked 120th. I was really high for them. Really surprised on that. Alabama is 109. So this is gonna be grown man SEC football heavyweight match, throwing bombs at each other. Slobber knocker if you're a wrestling fan.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is the last 3 times that Alabama has lost since 2015 at home has been, I think the team scored 43, 45, and 34. So it's first team to 30 in this one. So I'm going to go 34-31 Georgia to win. It's going to be late touchdown, maybe rushing touchdown to win, but they have to win rushing the ball and turnover margin. If not, they let Jalen Milroy sit back and carve them up and run around. It'll be a long night, and got to get off to a quick start. Can't let Bama get ahead of them because I don't believe Georgia's built to come from behind. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, completely agree. And I know because this is very odd now, but I had one of my Georgia friends tell me, he said, y'all still get this treatment. He said, but I'm learning what y'all have meant all those years that y'all got the treatment by the media when y'all lose or y'all had a close game. And then, the AP poll drops you or anything like that. And it says now we kind of feel that effect of what that kind of meant. And here's like my opinion. If it's a blowout by either team, yeah, the other one deserves to drop a few spots. But if it's close, I mean, if it's a less than 10-point game, I don't think Bama or Georgia apiece should drop lower than 3 spots, in my opinion. I mean, because, you're talking about a top 5 matchup, a top 4 matchup, the 2 best teams in the SEC, 2 teams that are going to make the playoff, 2 teams that are going to probably compete for a title, and the teams that for the foreseeable future, with high recruiting classes, good coaches, are going to be competing against each other, and it's going to be everybody against them. It's going to be Alabama, Georgia, and then the rest of everybody else is what it's going to be. That's going to be the talk. I think personally, either team shouldn't drop more than 3 spots, in my opinion, if it's a close game. Now, like I said, it's a 21-point or over blowout, then yeah, maybe drop a little further. But I mean, we lost to Texas last year when we were number 3, and we lost by 10. Didn't play the best game, but we still lost by 10. And we turned the ball over 4 times and only lose by 10. But they dropped us from 3 all the way down to 13, and I'm like, 10 spots, really? And then even last year, Georgia's 12-0 all the way up to the SEC championship game. They're number 1. They're playing number 8 Alabama, and slobber knocker of a game, 27-24. And in my opinion, last year I had on my show prior to the college football playoff selection show, I had Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and Florida State. So I always tell the Florida State people, your bones not to pick with Georgia or Alabama. It was totally Texas. So, because they rode so high off of the win off of us for so long, and then struggled beating Kansas and Wyoming and several other teams, and lost to Oklahoma. But yeah, but they dropped Georgia, 7 spot or like 6 spots, and I'm like,
1 to 6.
Yeah, I was like, that's a little harsh for a 3-point loss to. I mean, still a good team, but I mean, I said that's a little harsh for that. And then I said, you dropped us 10 spots for 1 loss, and so I think, like I said, if it's close, it deserves to be. You don't deserve to drop that far, and either way, whoever wins this game, whoever loses this game, like I said, each of these teams they're going to have challenges. Georgia's still got to go to Ole Miss. Georgia's still got to play Tennessee. Alabama's got to go to Tennessee, to LSU. Georgia's got to go to Texas. So, you're still going to have challenges. But this is why you play these games, and this is a good measuring stick for each team. So, the thing I want to see Saturday night is, first of all, I don't want to see anybody from either team get hurt, because these teams are very elite. And I also just want to see, guys keep the game clean. Like, I don't want to see any late hits, any dirty stuff. Like, there's going to be your trash talking. There's going to be your competitive nature, because these are 2 good competitors. But, and I hope all the fans in Tuscaloosa and, all the ones coming from Athens as well, don't get into any fights. Don't get any fist fights. It's just a game at the end of the day. Hey, the sun's going to come up on Sunday. We're still going to go on the next week. Georgia's going to play their game. Alabama's going to play their game. It's not going to matter. In the spirit of football, us fans, we want to see our team win, but I think there needs to be a mutual respect, because I've been keeping up with Twitter all week, and I'm pretty sure you have too. You're seeing the Dawg fans and the Tide fans go at each other, and they bring up 21, and then they bring up 2018, and then they do this and do that. I'm like, okay, that's the past. Let's talk about now. All right, let's talk about what's happening this year. I said the past is already done. That's over with. I said, let's talk about what we're going to do now. And then I said, and then we can talk about it for the next 365 days. So there you go.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I just hope it's a great game, and as advertised, going to be night game, huge following, and hope they get a ton of viewers, hopefully over 12, 13 million, whatever it is.
Should be one of the top games of the season, I think. And honestly, I told one of my friends last week, I said, if game day isn't there, there's a problem. So, and sure enough, it is. So very excited to see that. And like I said, should be an intense environment. I've been to a lot of games in Tuscaloosa. And I was telling somebody earlier, I said, I think this has the potential to be one of the loudest games I've ever been to. So it's going to be a heavyweight fight. It's going to be 15 rounds. We're going to take punches from y'all. Y'all are going to take some from us. And it's going to be whoever can land that last one, whoever can really land that knockout punch.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great that you get to get together. I'm sure that's going to be an electric environment.
Indeed.
Yeah, and then Alex, appreciate you coming on again. How do we follow you on social media? Got your Twitter right here. Also, looks like you got some followers there, and you're building up your Bama Factor on YouTube.
Yes. Usually my primary one is Instagram, though. You can find me at the.bama.factor there.
Got over 20,000 followers. That's awesome.
Yes, 20,000 followers, closing in on 21,000. That's where I do the majority of my posting. Yeah, Twitter's kind of getting up and going as well. Try to stay active on that as well. Also can follow me on TikTok as well. Same thing. And YouTube each and every week. I have brand new episodes that release every Thursday. They can also catch me on Spotify and Apple Podcast as well. But Instagram is where I do the majority of my content. It's also where I try to respond to all of the DMs I get from any of the followers, any questions, anything like that. That's where I do a lot of my polls. All of the graphics really go on there. So yeah, that's where anybody can find me if they want to. They have any questions, they can feel free to ask.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming on, and make sure everybody to like, subscribe, and check out the Bama Factor. Follow him on Instagram, build that up. And really appreciate you coming on, and both of us being part of the college huddle.
Yes, I definitely appreciate it. Always glad to help out a fellow college huddle member. So
Yeah, appreciate it, Alex. And if everybody's still around, make sure to like, subscribe, share the Doghouse podcast, and everybody check it out. 7:30, I believe it's ABC, Georgia at Alabama. It should be a great one.